I was 21 years old. My mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. That night, I went out to a diner with some friends of mine, and for the first time in my life, I was sort of like faced with this idea that this all ends at some point. And on that diner napkin at the Crystal Lake Diner here in New Jersey, I wrote down about 98 things that I wanted to do before I died. I had no idea at that point what a bucket list was. I'd never heard of one before, but I just thought it was a good idea to write these things down. And then over the past years, I've tried to take away at those things, and I've been able to do a lot. I've taught in Africa, drove my car across country, I became a dad, I got a college degree, I've swam with sharks, I built a giant snowman that looked like Mr. T.
Pity the fool!
And these were all things that I wanted to do. And so now, it had me thinking lately, what would it look like to have a teacher bucket list? So I've had things that I've wanted to do in my classroom, and I've executed on a lot of them, and there's still more that I really want to do. But I just thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have an actual list of stuff that I want to achieve as an educator? And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. We all have things that we actually want to achieve in our classroom. Some of those are practical. Getting your classroom management under lock, having your students' test scores go up, could be helping kids with their reading ability or the multiplication tables. Or you might have larger dreams, like things that you really want to do and you're not even really sure right now how you're going to pull that off. Like being able to travel with your students, having certain speakers come to your classroom, having a classroom makeover, having parties in the elevator, which is still something that's on my list and I haven't done yet. Or seeing certain students graduate and succeed in life. Now with all of these, I think the importance of this is there's some power to putting things down on a list, which is why you can't see this right now, but my desk is literally covered with lists and post-it notes. Because if I don't write it down, it's not real. But once I write it down, that's just a hope, that's just a dream. How do we make those practical? I think the way that we do that is by backwards engineering a lot of the things that we want to do. Putting it down and then picking something to focus on and creating a list of micro actions that are going to get you to that goal. One of my all-time bucket list goals was to take my students abroad. I work in West Philly at an all-boys school, and most of my students have never even left their block. But I wanted to get them not just somewhere else in America, I wanted to take them somewhere else in the world so they could have that larger perspective, to gain some distance from where they came from, to have a sense of what the world might be like outside of 56th Street or outside of West Philly or outside of Philadelphia. But to do that, we were gonna need to raise money. First, we found a trip. We found a trip that we felt we could afford. We found a trip that was exotic enough, that was adventurous enough. And the students and I decided that we were gonna go to Costa Rica. But to get that money, we were gonna have to do another bucket list item, which was to create some sort of entrepreneurial program in the school. So the students and I decided that we needed a store. A store fit because my students constantly eat at corner stores all over the neighborhood. So why not have them buy from us? And then that money would actually roll back into the student's future. And so that's what we did. We made a store. As usual, we made something from nothing. Bought a bunch of plywood, I cut up a bunch of boxes, and it looked like we were shipping children all over the world because it was just plywood boxes. I taught the students how to front stack things. I taught them about customer service. We got to work on math skills. We got to work on displays and advertising. And it was this really fun experience for students that weren't even going on the trip to try and help students that did decide that they wanted to go on the trip. And it was awesome. We were able to pull it off. I took a number of students to Costa Rica for like 2 weeks, and we went ziplining, we went hot springs, we snorkeled and scuba dived and took boats down rivers like the Jungle Cruise. It was awesome. And that trip, I really believe, changed kids' lives.
Absalom, do you feel safe? No? Okay, good. So we go for it. Living life on the edge.
And since then, we've gone on any number of trips that have also been bucket list items. But that trip wouldn't have been possible if we had just dreamed about going to Costa Rica. We had to think about where we were going to go, what company we were going to go with. We had to meet that company. We had to talk to the parents. We had to sell the trip to the students, not to get them to just spend their money on it, but to get them to believe that it was actually worth their while, and that working towards something like that, although it was hard and took a lot of after school hours, it was actually going to get us there. And then we had to come up with the business and figure out how we were going to sell stuff, what the store was going to look like, where in the school would it be located, what kind of things were we going to sell. So it was all these micro actions that built to the bigger dream. The beauty in that is once you make those micro actions and you think, I have to go buy Capri Suns and candy at BJ's or Sam's Club or Costco, that's something you can do. Going to Costa Rica might not feel like something you can do, but going and buying supplies is something you can do. And then showing up to school with all that stuff and selling it is something that you can do. And then reaching out to a company and seeing if they would partner with you, that's something that you can do. And then you begin to slowly but surely get to that place where it's like, this dream just became a reality. Now, practical matters are the same thing. If you want strong classroom management, you can put that on a shelf somewhere, you can put that on a list, and it just seems like a dream that lives off into the distance. But what you really need to just think about is, what does classroom management look like? What does that actually look like in real time? It looks like maybe students coming in, knowing what they're supposed to do, getting to work, having a minimum of outbursts. But can we start with that first minute of class and making sure that that's on point? Because in doing that, you can meet your students at the door, shake everyone's hand when it's not Corona land, and then make sure that everyone knows what to do in the first moments of class. Having things so structured that the students know exactly what is expected of them. Or finding the students that create the most havoc in class and taking time to build relationships with them to find out their reasoning for why they act the way that they act. Because as we all know, students just don't act some way for no reason. Everybody has a reason. Doesn't give them an excuse to act like that, but it gives them a reason. And when you know the reason, that child makes more sense, and then you can kind of work on that issue with the kid. And so now I have a lot of dreams still that I want to do in my classroom. I want to have a day where I don't have any traditional seating in my classroom. I want this kind of like large Game of Thrones-esque table that I sit at with all the students, and that table can break into pieces so that when we want to do small groups or independent work, they can do it. But when we come together, we're all sitting at this sort of family-sized table. And I just think that that would be awesome. I want to have a treehouse in my classroom.
What?
Like a legit treehouse. And I don't know how I'm going to pull that off, but it's going to happen. You'll see one day. I want to go to more places with my students, especially Japan and South Africa. I think that those two trips would have such a huge impact on my students. That is something that I think about and dream about being able to do that one day. And my biggest dream, probably, that I'm not sure how it's going to happen yet, is one day Will Smith will visit my classroom, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in person. I mean, bro, we're in West Philly. Like, it doesn't get any easier than that. Because I don't know if you know this, but Will Smith was born and raised there.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised.
So I've said it here, been trying to make that happen for 3 years now. I've gotten close. I've gotten closer than I actually want to share here because I'm not sure that it was really, I'm not sure that I did the right thing. And I might have messed it up a couple of times, but it will happen one day. And then this will all just be funny. And let me even say that when you start dreaming about stuff, sometimes we can get hung up on the idea that, you know, we'll never get there. I think it's important to sit with some of the things that you have done. That even now, I get discouraged that it's either coronavirus or the school's in upheaval or the students this year I'm not really jiving with in certain classes. And so I think the important thing here is to remember some of the things you've done. And when I sit there and really think about the last 15 years in the classroom and the invention of cereal parties and how huge that has been on class culture in my classroom.
Are you cereal?
And if you don't know what a cereal party is, talk about it in the book. These are parties where we eat cereal with the least nutritional value together, and it builds community and culture, and it's the most amazing thing that I've ever thought of to do in my class besides, you know, actually teaching, and it's cheap. The only thing that's cheaper is Top Ramen parties because those things are 6 for $1.
Top ramen tastes like cup-o noodles.
We've had birthday parties for kids. We've had times where we sit with students at lunch 3 times a day with 30 students, building relationships and hanging out with kids. We've had a maker club where we've made stuff and then sold it to people in the school. We've had our school store. We've created some of the greatest play sets ever. Like the set for the play has been next level, unbelievable, and gotten to meet really great people. Most well known is when we got to go to New York City and meet Gary Vaynerchuk at VaynerMedia.
What's up? How you guys doing?
Thinking about those things, sitting with those things, those are all things that we worked hard to get to. None of those just happened on accident. It started with coming up with a plan, coming up with a way to think about how we were going to do this. And I'll leave you with this. When you're thinking about the stuff that you want to do, it's of course about you, partially. But when you fail to have the courage to actually step up, to execute, to do the thing that you're dreaming of doing, remember that everything we do is about students. Education's only ever about students. And so if you're nervous to send a DM to someone, to ask someone to speak to your class, to ask for permission to paint your walls black, or to build a treehouse in your classroom, or to create stand-up desks, or to take a certain class trip, remember that when you're asking for students, there's an extra level of courage that comes with that, because you're not just asking for you, you're making this about the kids. And it's easy to say no to a teacher. It's easy to say no to an adult. It's harder to say no to the dreams of children. So let that fuel your courage when asking or for going after anything that you're dreaming about on your list. Gang, before you go, if you would please, I'm always looking for ideas, and I will give you credit where credit is due. But would you please put at least one of your ideas in the comment section below? I'd love to know what you're thinking about, what you're dreaming about, what you'd love for you and your students to be able to do or to have, or to what you're dreaming of in this time. And that's it, everyone. Until next time, peace.